Love it or hate it, the Glock 19 is quite possibly the world's most popular handgun. It's reliable, it's easily concealed, and because of the aftermarket support for that pistol, there's no end to the possible upgrades for it. This gun takes that to a whole new level. The PFC9 by Polymer 80 is essentially what we might call a Glock clone. Most people probably know these guns as the 80% kits that you can have shipped directly to your home in most states. Then you can finish drilling and milling the frame, do the assembly, and have a fully functional firearm. Alternately, you can go ahead and buy a completed and serialized version from your local FFL, and that's what I have here. So the question is, why would you buy a serialized PFC9 versus a Glock 19? That's going to be the focus of today's video. As far as internals go, this gun is going to be compatible with all Gen 3 Glock parts. That means anything that you may want to upgrade, whether it's an extended slide release, apex trigger, or whatever the case may be, all that stuff is out there and available for this gun. Now, I'm not 100% sure what the trigger is that Polymer 80 uses for this gun. It's not bad. It's definitely better than a stock Glock. I'm averaging right about 5.5 pounds for the trigger pull on this. And just for comparison, the apex on my Floyd's Custom M&P, I have this set for 4 pounds. Now, I'm comfortable with a 4-pound trigger on my concealed carry gun because I practice with it a lot. I actually prefer 4 pounds over 5.5. That's just me. I would recommend everybody just train some more. Now, once I finally have this fully broken in, I think the trigger is something that I'm going to consider upgrading. I may go with the Apex, or I might just look for something else just to try something new. Now, the takedown and the slide release on this, they're just stock Glock parts, nothing special there. It does have a slightly extended mag release, which I do appreciate. I've been looking at other options for that, but I can live with it as is for now. Mechanically speaking, this gun is a Glock. There's just a few things that set it apart from the G19. First, the frame does have a standard 4-slot rail. Now, it's not like the Glock doesn't have a rail. I just never personally liked the single-slot rail system that they use on the Glock. Not a big deal, really. It's just something that I had to point out. The 4 main advantages to the PFC9 frame versus the G19 frame are going to be grip texture, beaver tail, double undercut, and grip angle. Now, if you've owned a Glock, if you own a Glock, if you've shot a Glock for years and you're perfectly comfortable with it, then my opinion of the advantages to the Polymer 80 probably aren't going to apply to you. These guns aren't necessarily made for the people who swear by Glock. They're made more for the people who want the reliability and the simplicity of a Glock, but for whatever reason, don't like the Glock. Let's start with grip texture. Now, this grip texture, it's pretty aggressive. It reminds me a lot of my M&P 2.0 when I first got it. I've had this M&P 2.0 for, I don't know, 2 years. It's been a while, and it was extremely aggressive as far as the grip texture when I first got it. But over time, that grip texture has smoothed out quite a bit. It's still fairly aggressive, but nowhere near like it used to be. When I first got that gun doing a inside the waistband carry, the grip texture would go ahead and just leave a rash on my side because it was so aggressive. Polymer 80 has come up with a grip texture that is aggressive without being overly aggressive. And if it helps you visualize, I would say it's something like, I don't know, 80 grit sandpaper that's been slightly used. So it's not quite so rough, but it still gives you just one heck of a grip. Now, Glock can do whatever dots or checkers or, whatever it is that they want to do with their new models, but it never seems to fail that when they come out with a gun, people buy it, and one of the very first things that they do is they send it off to somebody to have it stippled, or they go ahead and do it themselves. Glock's grip texture, I'm sorry, but it just sucks. Grip texture is a big deal. I mean, you're not always going to be shooting in a nice climate-controlled shooting range. The better the texture is, the more solid grip that you're going to have when you actually need that firearm. This is especially important in less than optimal conditions. High stress situations, sweaty hands, maybe it's a rainy day, you want a solid grip. The PFC9 provides this. I actually wouldn't change a thing about the grip texture. I'd say that it is as close to perfection for me as humanly possible for a pistol right out of the box with no modifications. Next on the list is the Beaver tail, and I really do miss my old full-size M&P because of the Beaver tail that it had. I wasn't real happy when they chopped it down for the design on the Compact 2.0, but it also wasn't an absolute deal breaker for me. I wanted a gun that was the same size as a Glock 19, but wasn't a Glock 19 for my daily carry. The M&P fit that for me, and as you can see, there isn't much of a Beaver tail there at all. The Beaver tail, though, it does have a specific purpose. Now, this is my 2011, and the Beaver tail comes up over the hand so that you can get a nice, deep, solid grip on that thing. The Beaver tail helps control recoil. It makes getting a good grip when you're drawing from concealment that much easier. When you reach down and you grab a 1911 or 2011, that Beaver tail on the grip safety forces your hand down into the optimal grip. It helps make your hand seat right there where it's supposed to be. Now the Beaver tail on the PFC9, it may not be as pronounced as it is on a 1911 or 2011, but it's actually quite a bit larger than it is on the Smith & Wesson, and it actually does quite a good job at coming up over the hand. Now, if Smith & Wesson makes a 3.0 M&P, and they bring back the Beaver tail that they had on the original M&P, that's it. I'm done, I'm buying it, all the rest of these guns are getting retired. I'm not buying anymore. Okay, who am I kidding? I'm still going to buy more guns. Now, it is worth noting that I do understand why companies like Smith & Wesson and Glock chop that Beaver tail the way they do, so don't leave a comment because I already get it. It's a concealment thing. Cool story, bro. The Beaver tail is not going to make or break your ability to conceal that pistol. Okay, moving on. The next thing on my list is going to be the double undercut, and that is a modification that most people do when they send their Glocks off to be stippled. That double undercut comes standard on the PFC9, and just like the Beaver tail, it does help you get the best grip possible. So with the double undercut, you can not only get your middle finger nice and deep up in that trigger, combined with the Beaver tail, but also the secondary cut allows a nice spot for your index finger on your support hand. This gives you an incredible amount of control over your firearm. The double undercut on this 2011, really helpful for getting your hands deep into your grip where they're supposed to be. Now, if you've never handled a gun that has a double undercut to it, you really need to get your hands on one and do a little test firing. It will change your view on the way you're supposed to hold a pistol. Again, double undercut. It comes standard on the Polymer 80, and it's one of the things that made me gravitate towards this gun. The main thing that pushed me towards getting this Polymer 80 is the grip angle. This is another area where if you're happy shooting Glocks, it is definitely not a big deal to you. Now, I've always struggled shooting Glocks. I put the time in, I put the rounds in. For whatever reason, I cannot get used to the grip angle on a Glock. Some people love it. Some people just can't get used to it. That's me. With the Glock, I have to constantly adjust because it does not feel like a natural angle of grip for me. If it works for you, that's great. But for the rest of us, Polymer 80 solved that issue. The grip angle of the Polymer 80 is closer to what you would expect out of a 1911. That grip angle is based off of the natural angle of the human wrist when holding a pistol. Believe me, there was a lot of science involved in picking that grip angle. More science, in fact, than most of the actions most states have taken through COVID. The reason these four things are so important, the grip angle, the texture, the Beaver tail, the double undercut, the reason those are so important is because those factor into grip. Accuracy with a handgun is a byproduct of a good grip. Grip is everything. You can line those sights up all day long, but if your grip sucks, you're going to struggle with follow-up shots. For those of us that struggle with the ergonomics of the Glock, Polymer 80 gives us everything that we need for, I don't know, right about $100 less than a Glock. Not only that, but it uses all the same mags as a Glock. As of right now, this gun is mostly stock. I've only done 2 upgrades to it. Number 1 is the green fiber optic front sight and the Steel City Arsenal Magwell. The sights that came on this gun were not horrible. The back is blacked out, which I do prefer, but I also like a green fiber optic front. It is so much easier for my eyes to pick up. I do prefer a red dot, and I am going to send this off and have it cut so that I can go ahead and install one. But for right now, I think this combination of sights is going to work for me.
You know, you get to a certain age and your vision starts failing you. And that is when steel targets really become pretty awesome.
It's true that the older that you get, the more your eyes fail you. And at this point, I'll take any advantage I can get. I definitely do prefer having a micro red dot versus just iron sights. I do think that everybody who uses a micro red dot should train with those iron sights as well, because you never know when shit might happen. Now, a Magwell. Magwell is an absolute must-have for a carry pistol for me. This one right here is from Steel City Arsenal. It is made out of aluminum, which is nice. I looked at probably 8 or 10 different brands before I ended up landing on the Steel City Arsenal Magwell. I'm really glad that I ended up going with the Steel City Arsenal Magwell. It's really high quality, really well made, and it doesn't have any issues accepting standard Glock mags. Some of the Magwells out there aren't compatible with stock base pads, which means that you'll have to also purchase new base pads for your mags, and that can really add up depending on how many mags you have. One of the advantages to having a Magwell like this is that it gives you a nice little ledge for your pinky finger to sit on. It's a nice little pinky chair, if you will. Every little thing that you can do to add to your grip is definitely going to help you in the long run. On my Floyd's Custom M&P, of course, I've got the Floyd's Custom Magwell on there. Again, it's got a nice little shelf for the old pinky. Helps me lock my grip in place nice and tight to help control recoil. You know, you really cannot go wrong with a Magwell. Not only is it helping you with your grip, but it's also going to make your mag changes that much smoother. Now, who knows if you're ever going to find yourself in a position where you have to do a real-world, high-stress mag change. Probably not, but if you can set yourself up to be in a better position, then why the hell wouldn't you? Now, the primary argument against using a Magwell on a concealed carry gun is that it's harder to conceal, and I don't personally agree with that, not one bit. I busted out the old calipers and took some measurements, and what I came up with was an additional 1/4 inch added to the gun. Now, as far as the length of grip goes, you've got an additional 1/4 inch here. As far as the thickness goes, you've got an additional 1/4 inch there. Now, if an additional 1/4 inch makes or breaks your ability to conceal a firearm, I would say that you're probably doing it wrong. The benefits of a Magwell, to me, far outweigh the perceived inability to conceal that firearm. Ultimately, that's an individual choice. That's up to you, that's up to me, that's up to everybody. Make that decision for yourself. If you've never fired a pistol that has a Magwell on it, find a friend that has one and go to the range with them. I feel like all we've been doing today is talking about the specs of this gun. Is it reliable? Is it better than the Glock 19? What's the advantage of buying this as a serialized pistol versus an 80% kit? We'll start with reliability. So far, I've only had the time to put about 300 rounds of remanufactured 115 grain ammo through this. I wasn't exactly keeping track of the 147 grain that I put through it. I'd say somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 rounds maybe. So I'm at 450, maybe 500 rounds. Out of that 500 rounds, we'll call it, I haven't had a single hiccup with this gun. It's worth noting that anytime that I get a new handgun, I always disassemble it. I clean off whatever factory lube is on there. Then I go ahead and put it back together and use a generous amount of Lucas gun oil. Whether or not that's made a difference, I can't say. All I can say is that so far, out of 500 rounds, it's been smooth running and it's been accurate. Now, I do like the idea of buying an 80% kit. I love building things. There is a certain advantage to buying a pre-built serialized version, though. When you buy a pre-built serialized version, you can expect it to be finished to manufacturer's specifications. It's not really a complicated process to finish an 80% lower. They make it pretty easy on you. But there's always a chance that you may cut just a little too much off, you may sand a little too much off, and in the long run, that could really hamper reliability with that firearm. Now, I have every bit of confidence that I could order an 80% kit, I could finish it and have a good, smooth running firearm. But the thing is, when you buy one of these that's pre-built and serialized, you know what you're getting right out of the box. Now, is the Polymer 80 better than a Glock 19? Well, that's more of a subjective question and answer. For me, yes, the PFC9 has taken the Glock 19. It's kept all of that accuracy and reliability. It's just turned it into something that is far more ergonomic and easy to handle. That's the funny thing about pistols. Just because it works for me doesn't mean it's going to work for you. So maybe a Polymer 80 fits all of your personal needs. Maybe it doesn't. I'm just going to say, if you have the opportunity to get one of these in your hand, jump on it. This gun has quickly earned itself a position in my carry rotation, which is more than I can say for a handful of other firearms that I've purchased over the last couple years. All right, that is it for today, everybody. Polymer 80, PFC9, not bad at all.